That was a good find.
I found a really big one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You saw that one from like 60 yards away too.
Yeah, I did.
So today we're spending our time searching this. It's the Booth Ranch. It's a 1,320 acre property north of Sedan, Kansas. And we do currently have this property listed. It's a pretty amazing place when you can find 25 plus sheds in 2.5 hours.
I found one. I found a big one.
You found a good one.
I found this really big one.
That's awesome.
And a lot of people probably aren't going to believe that because, like I said, I do a lot of shed hunting, and I would probably look at that and with a little bit of skepticism and say, sure. But this place is unreal.
All right.
Found one already.
Nice. Sure. So that's what we call burrs. So basically on the smooth part, that's where they rub them off when they're rubbing up against trees. But that's basically just where the blood vessels were running through the velvet.
We're here in the middle of February. It's kind of an early start to shed season, but it's hard to wait when you start seeing sheds. I found the first one today from the road before we even got onto the property. Jake, what's some things you look for when you start shed hunting every year?
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me is one, the reason why I like so much is because as a hunter, most of us are so passive and trying not to interrupt and disturb a property. And so, you kind of hunt the fringes and get on the edges. And when you go shed hunting, you just go full bore and you can walk the places that you haven't been walking and you can see the sign and find it. And so for me, shed hunting is just that. I use it as a scouting tool, finding scrapes and rubs and rub lines that I didn't see or didn't know. And, maybe there's a location on a property that I didn't even realize the deer were using this so much. And now all of a sudden the sign jumps out to me. You can get out here before green up where the sign's still very fresh and you can see what was going on in the rut that you might have missed. So then we take that aspect into it, and then you start looking at where do we find sheds. For me, I like bedding areas. You were talking earlier about green grass, even food sources, seasonal food sources, those tame grass sources that are going to green up real early under hedge trees, places like that, sometimes out in pasture. You found some out in pastures here this morning. So those are kind of some of the areas and some of the things that I'm looking for when I'm going out and looking for sheds.
So obviously, like green fields, wheat fields get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. You find a lot of sheds there, but don't be limited to thinking that it's wheat we're looking for. Most of the sheds we found today is just a pasture grass that's growing underneath hedge trees out on a flat space. If we wouldn't have saw one shed there to start the journey, we would have drove right by this area, and we found 18 sheds in that pasture in 35-40 minutes. And then we came down into what we would traditionally think is the place to find sheds. There's nothing green in here. There's nothing to eat. And we found, I have
a couple of old ones. Yeah,
no, they're all
5
old.
or 6 old ones.
Yeah, there's no fresh. Like all the fresh stuff was up there in that green grass. So if you have any green in your food plots, if you're running a feeder, if you have big agricultural sources around.
This is a brownie or a freshie. It's this year's. You can see the color on it. See how it's so much browner than the rest of those, how they're so white. Another way you can tell that it's this year's is if you look right here, you can see this little bit of stuff right here. That's called a wax ring. And when they've got the wax ring around them, that means they've been on the ground, depending on the elements, but maybe less than a month or so. Something else you can tell from sheds is you can tell kind of the condition of the deer. So when this is convex like this, which means this base here sticks out, that means that deer's healthy. If it's concaved and this part's sunken in on the shed, it means that deer's either nutritionally stressed or maybe even has an injury or something like that. And so there's a couple of different things you can tell about your deer herd off of the sheds, not to mention just where they like to live.
You can make a chandelier out of them.
You could make a chandelier out of them. Have you ever seen somebody make one of those big Christmas trees out of them?
No,
Those are pretty cool too.
To your left.
What?
Left. Right there.
Oh, that's one.
Rin, what you got?
Antlers.
You got 2 good ones, huh?
Then pay attention to just the native browse. Anything green that's out in the brown landscape, it's probably somewhere you should pay attention to.
One of the other big areas, you know, you're talking about green fields on the neighbors, and you know, I know it gets a lot of hype and some people don't have a lot of luck, but look at your fence crossings. And there is something too, when they jump, you know, that they do lose them. And I found a lot around those fences where they're maybe going to a green field across on the neighbors, but they're coming back on me to bed, you know, and so you're finding them where they're jumping those fences going back and forth.
My best spots I've been kind of your broken pasture. You see a little bit on this property where you have cedars, but they're not so thick that the deer can't walk through. You got grass and shrubs and stuff coming up in those. And it seems like they bed there and they spend a lot of time there. And it's just natural that they're likely to drop their antlers in those spots.
Because ultimately that's what you're looking for. Where are deer spending the most time?
Yeah.
And once you find that, you're going to find some sheds.
And I'm like, okay, I've walked every other part on the property.
They gotta be eating that pasture grass.
Yeah.
It's not very often you take off for a morning and pick up this many antlers, but you know, what do you know? It's Ren's first trip. Maybe he's a good luck charm.
How did we get?
26 plus 1 turtle shell and 1 cow jaw.
There you go.